Is it a problem that kids' sports these days are highly organized? Might it be hindering your child's athletic development or potentially personal development? Hi, guys. Mark Bubbs here, performance and clinical nutritionist with over 20 years of supporting professional athletes across all the major sport leagues and coaching executives in Fortune 100 companies. Now, I'm going to share with you some of the insights from the best coaches in the world. And today, you're going to hear from elite, world-class endurance coach Steve Magnus. I asked Steve if we have too many organized sports and not enough running around playing tag and unstructured play. Here's his answer.
Oh, that's a great insight. And I think it actually makes us worse. I would argue that there's data that shows us that it hurts our performance as an adult and probably our well-being to a degree. Because they've looked at this in professional soccer football players who made it to the top, is they generally have either more playtime when they're younger or what we'd call like unorganized practice, which back in the day was, you go to the sandlot with your friends and,
Be home by 8 or 9
practice,
or
but
whatever it was.
yeah, that's what it is. And I think
So the more unorganized play, the better the overall performance of the young athletes. So how exactly is play so important? Steve unpacks things in this next clip.
And I think what happens is the reason that that's important is twofold, is that play is twofold. Is one, is in sport, it shows that that's where we develop our creativity. Because we don't have some adult telling us, this is what you do, this is what you don't do, this is how you do it. And what happens is when the adult isn't there, we have to explore. So we try different things, sometimes crazy things, and a lot of them won't work. But out of that, some of them do. And I think if you see at the highest level in sport, this is where you get, some of the Patrick Mahomes doing some crazy, backyard football like play in the NFL that pays off because he had that diverse, background of playing baseball and football and other things that gives him a little of this creativity. And then the second part that play or that exploration gives us is, again, psychological research tells us that is the foundation of our intrinsic motivation. So that builds us up where we understand our love for the sport.
So play is not just play. There's some pretty profound things happening when kids are allowed to explore without any adults around to control the situation, control the fun, provide instruction. It's an opportunity to really develop their own creativity, which is massive, not even just within their own sport or athletic development, but also within their personal development and their educational development. These are skills that translate into the classroom or into solving problems in the real world. The other piece that really hits home is this notion of intrinsic motivation. We're going to circle back to this at the end of the video, but intrinsic motivation is a fundamental component to high performance. Working with elite performers and executives in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who might be struggling with weight gain or high blood pressure or high blood sugars, and they're trying to adopt a diet or adopt an exercise routine, oftentimes one of the fundamental things we're missing is intrinsic motivation, right? They're doing these things for extrinsic reasons. And so starting to find your compass when you're younger, when you're a kid, and building in some of that intrinsic motivation that we run and move and play, not just because we want to have a six pack or because we want to become a professional athlete, but because it's foundational for your physical health and mental health and happiness. So if we pause there and circle back to why too much organized sport is not good for young athletes. I have my views on it, but I'm going to let you listen to Steve's views in this next clip.
And when we have super organized stuff, sometimes it helps our intrinsic motivation a little bit as we see progress, but it doesn't help us fall in love for the sport or the activity as much. So I think when we take that away and go like this very strict robotic path of like, we're going to create these super athletes, it backfires to a degree because we're losing some of the underlying, motivators or underlying skills that you can't just like, force feed. And I think you see the same when you look at outside of sport in academics. In fact, there's all sorts of research that shows like if we solely teach to a test, we lose some of these same things in terms of our academic pursuits. So it's the same thing regardless.
If your child isn't in love with the sport, They're not going to develop the same level of underlying skills. It's fascinating to see this transfers over to the academic world. When we coach kids up just to pass a test, we also lose a lot of those foundational qualities that just don't translate to the real world. Let's segue now into a common question I get from parents, whether they're parents of athletes or parents in general, but what are the best activities to help children and kids build a foundation for athletic development? For me, activities like gymnastics, dance, track and field are all tremendous because they build multiple qualities: mobility, flexibility, a variety of movement patterns, etc. Let's now listen to Steve's take on this topic.
Here's how I view it is like let the kid guide things. And what I would say is there is that like you're the adult, you're the parent, but like your goal in getting out of this sport isn't to create little Johnny or Susie who's going to be get a college scholarship and go play professional, because like God knows if that'll happen, right? There's so many things that have to go right.
Yeah.
And most of it is out of your control. So, like, don't shoot for that outcome. Instead, like, what you want out of sport is, again, to get them to enjoy the experience, love the thing, and then have some sort of like physical activity foundation that makes them a healthy, happy human for life. And if out of that, they get really good at a sport, great. Like, let them go down that path.
Bonus.
So I think it means like dabbling and exploring in a lot of different sports and areas. And what those are, I think depends on their kind of skill set and interest. But I would let their interest like drive things. Now,
Tiger Woods once said he was never, ever pushed to play golf by his dad. It was largely portrayed in the media as a dad who was really pushing and dragging his son out to play golf. Tiger says it couldn't be further from the truth. He was always the one asking to go out, asking to play, and pulling his dad along. If we look at other all-time great athletes like Wayne Gretzky in ice hockey, he was the one striving to build the ice rink in his backyard so he could practice hour after hour after hour. Or David Beckham, whose dad was also seen as potentially a little more heavy-handed, and David said it was always his choice to play, to practice, to keep at it in a relentless nature. So just as Steve says, let your kid's interest drive things. Now, the last area we'll touch on is what if your kid is really good at a certain sport? How do you provide the right environment or support for them to help them reach their potential? As a young track star, Steve has a unique lens for this question.
now, if they get really good at something, great, support them, but don't push them. Because again, I'll tell you this, if they're going to even make it at the highest level, it's got to come from them and within. If you are the one always driving it, they're not, even if they're the most talented kid in the world, it's not going to make it. So I would
Yeah,
say support
eventually you hit
them.
that wall, don't you? With the pushing, even
You
if they're
all
great, you're always going to hit that wall at some point.
you always do. And every single coach in every sport has seen it. Like where you get the super talented kid and you're trying to get the most out of them, but you see it as like, like mom or dad like forced you to practice every day. And that might have worked in high school, but once you got to college, then like I'm not driving to your dorm room or apartment and dragging you out. Like if you don't have it, you're gonna hit that wall. So to me, it's like how do we create those habits and an interest and love of the thing to be able to use your motivation towards it if that's what they want to do.
To sum up, make time for more play and unorganized fun with your kids. This is a phenomenal way to develop athletic qualities and movement patterns, and to let your kids be creative and explore the outer edges, especially when there's no parents or teachers or rule keepers around. Unstructured play is also foundational to building intrinsic motivation, which is the absolute foundation for any high performer. And of course, find activities your kids enjoy. And remember, don't push, let them drive things. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any new content.